Kevin, come on up. You've got the stage.
I won't be up here very long, I promise. So this is going to shock you, but I understood everything that Craig just talked about between vacuum and gravity, evacuation systems for waste flow. I live and breathe that. That's what I do for a living. You want to confine a human being inside a joint. I've done that for 35 years. I do it very well. So I also might not be the most open-minded person after 35 years of doing this, and sometimes it's difficult. I know it's shocking, and sometimes it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. As we sat down and we started looking at a true departure of the new correctional facility in Northwest Indiana as a mental health treatment facility, a way to treat an emerging population that none of us have ever seen or encountered before. If you don't think that the SMIs, seriously mentally ill populations, are growing in severity and numbers, it is, in Indiana, it's one of our most difficult things to manage within our prisons. Far more difficult than how to get rid of the waste. So I knew how to get rid of the waste. I knew how to confine a human being. I knew how to build a perimeter. As we started designing this new facility, we went all over the country looking at how folks were treating their acutely mental ill, their seriously mental ill, incarcerated individuals around the country. We went all over. People assured us we were going to come see the most effective, most grandiose, most elaborate mental health treatment facilities that in corrections that exist in the country today. Everywhere we went, and I don't say this lightly, everywhere we went, they were doing it no better than we were already doing in the state of Indiana. Simple statement of fact. We come back to Indiana, and we thought we've got to do better than this. We need to really look at what the next evolution of this mental health for the safety of our staff, the wellness of our inmates, for the idea of putting these people back out into the population as productive citizens, reducing recidivism. We had to come up with a different way to do it. As we started going through this design process that I am not familiar with, the whole idea of noise in cells, changing the lighting frequencies, everything from, I'm the definition of old school. You know, Warden white, off-white, what combination of colors inside your facility thereof do you want? I mean, that's simplistic. So I had to learn a new way to do business. And I learned that from this rock star that I found right in my own agency. Her name is Dr. Deanna Dwenger. So she was in charge of mental health. So not only she didn't just read a book, which seems to be a lot of professionals in correctional mental health delivery learn from reading a book or watching a video. I don't know where the hell they learned it, but she learned it from doing it in a cell house, inside a prison, dealing with these cats every single day. We sat down in some of the design meetings and as we started this, and I don't even want to think about how many years ago that's been now, but we sat down in some of these, and I was in awe of how much she was teaching me about the physical accommodations that are required, and then we started going into the different areas of what can we do to make this better. I found that I already had the most articulate, most knowledgeable expert that I would ever find right on my own staff. One of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my career was I introduced her to some other people, and they took her. And so now she works for Elevatus Architecture. She's doing great things, but she was truly the one who taught us. We reinvented the book on how to do this. We truly did, and she's the one that taught us. So she's a psychologist. That's not just because she gives my team and I apparently mental health help when we need it. That was another I guess advantage to having her around. But she is articulate. She's normal. She understands the business. She knows the business, and that's so hard to find in our industry in this area. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Deanna Dwenger. It's truly a pleasure to introduce her. She's been my friend, my co-worker, my confidant, my roadie, and this is her world, and she will explain it to you well. She has a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Kevin. That seems like quite the build up here. Before I start, though, we are actually going to watch a quick little video before I start.
This is a place with a story of decisions in the past that echo into the present. People around here say it's haunted. They say you can still hear the voices warning us.
I'm Joe Poor. This is the site of the former Central State Hospital for the Insane. The grounds are now home to a museum. All that's left of the hospital are a few old buildings, a plaque, a graveyard, and the story. And a story that tells us a lot about where we are now.
The story begins between 1850 and 1900, when hospitals like Central State were built all over the country to treat mental illness. By 1955, there were more than 500,000 secure mental health beds in the country. The population at that time was 164 million, so that's 341 beds for every 100,000 people. Then, we began a nationwide initiative called deinstitutionalization. The Community Mental Health Act of 1963 set the crisis in motion.
Government agencies began closing these hospitals. They believed that communities could do a better job of caring for the mentally ill patients. One by one, most of these facilities disappeared.
We went from 341 secure beds per 100,000 people in 1955 to only 18 beds per 100,000 people in 2022. In 1955, there were more than 500,000 mentally ill patients in the nation's public psychiatric hospitals. By 1994, this number had been reduced to 71,619.
So what happened to the mentally ill patients after they were released into our communities? Many were released without care, without friends, without family, nowhere to go. And many wound up living on our streets, homeless in our communities.
In 1950, the estimated unhoused population was around 100,000, mostly older men in the Skid Row sections of the 41 biggest cities. By 2024, more than 770,000 people are homeless on a given day in America, some temporary, some chronically. And by then it was men, women, and children, much of it still concentrated in metropolitan areas. But make no mistake, it's a critical crisis across the country, from our largest cities to our smallest towns.
We need to understand that many good people are trying to do something about this crisis, but too many discussions focus on ideologies and politics, when what we really need are solutions. And studies have shown there are two main reasons people become homeless.
According to a study by UCLA, 78% of the homeless population have some kind of mental disorder, and 75% suffer from drug addiction.
The crisis of homelessness in America has inflamed two more problems that burn out of control across the country: crime and the incarceration of mentally ill people in our jails and prisons.
A San Francisco Department of Public Health study called it the perilous trifecta: being homeless, mentally ill, and addicted.
And there's another crisis that we're not supposed to talk about, but it's well documented in the San Francisco study and others. The homeless commit crimes at 100 times the rate of the average citizen.
The mentally ill, homeless, and addicted in many cases wind up incarcerated in our jails and prisons, where the mentally ill have higher rates of recidivism and suicide than all other inmate populations. Over the past 20 years, the number of mentally ill inmates who commit suicide has increased from 19% to 38%. Recidivism rates are just as shocking. 54% reincarceration for people with severe mental illness, 66% for those with substance abuse problems, 68% for those with co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse problems.
My family's built correctional facilities since 1856, for 5 generations. I was born to this business. Jails and prisons are an essential service to our society. Always have been, they always will be. But jails and prisons are not the place for the mentally ill. They need treatment, not incarceration.
Up to 64% of jail inmates and 54% of prison inmates have some kind of diagnosable mental illness. Studies estimate the number of dangerously mentally ill patients, people with schizophrenia, manic depression, and bipolar disease, at 20 to 25% and higher in our big cities. And there are proven treatments and therapies for all these diseases. But our jails and prisons are not equipped to provide them.
Some people say there's no solution, that will never make a difference. But I've been in the correctional industry and detention facility business all my professional life, and I disagree. I'm not alone either. Nationally recognized experts are saying the same things.
We can design and build facilities that are suitable to treating mental illness. We can repurpose abandoned buildings like schools and hotels to house mentally ill patients. We can control lighting and sound, furniture and fixtures. These innovations have been proven to help. We can improve communication and rehabilitation. We can build facilities that will make a difference. We can design a new kind of correctional facility for the mentally ill, because that's exactly what we need.
No one doubts the compassion of the organizations working to solve the crisis of homelessness and the travesty of incarcerating mentally ill people in our jails and prisons. But it's time we measure compassion by outcomes, not intention. It's time we face this crisis. We have to. What we're doing now is not working, and it's not fair. It's not fair to the mentally ill to keep them in this downward spiral of homelessness, crime, and addiction. It's not fair to the law enforcement professionals in our jails and prisons. They're not trained or equipped to deal with them. And it's not fair to our communities. Join us. It's time for solutions.
Okay, I can take no credit for that video. It's just before me. But I'm gonna reiterate a lot of stuff that actually has already been said, but from a psychologist perspective, I suppose. Regardless of what foot attire I'm wearing right now, I love prison. I love jails. I love what you all are doing, and so I'm really excited to talk to you today. And don't worry, I brought tennis shoes for the tour, in case anyone's worried about my feet. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, understanding the need and the role of mental health professionals in correctional settings, the unique challenges that we face when we are in there, and how design can help support or hinder our mission, provide real-life examples. I'm going to try to give you some examples to keep this lively. I don't say that lighthearted. I'm not trying to make fun of people, but I think if I can give you some examples of the people that live inside of the facilities that you are designing, it might give you some help. And learn why access to natural light, sound control, and strategic placement, among other things, matters. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that if you're thinking you've already seen that presentation multiple times. So real quick, in graduate school, to become a psychologist, they tell you, these are the things I've got to learn about. And we focus mostly on that top one, mood disorders, right? Because 1 in 5 of us in this room is going to have a depression or anxiety episode during our lifetime. So if you're working in a community mental health center, that's probably what you're going to see, right? You might also see some trauma or adjustment disorders, people leaving jobs, having babies, just some things to work through in their life. Eating disorders, maybe if you're dealing with kids, maybe ADHD or disruptive disorders. So this is kind of what I came out of grad school thinking I was going to be treating. However, correctional mental health is literally everything. I see more psychosis and substance use than I was ever taught in school, a lot of personality disorders we're going to talk about later, trauma. In one day, these are examples. The examples I give you today are real patients that I have served. But I went from working with someone who had a suicide pact with his best friend. If they ever got caught up in like a high-speed chase, they were going to kill themselves. And his buddy, they both had guns. His buddy shot himself in the head. He did not. And he lives with that every day, thinking that he really failed his friend. He should have killed himself. And every day he's thinking that he's a failure because he's alive. I've worked with people who worked at the White House and because of the pressure had a psychotic break and ended up murdering a person who they thought was the devil, and the voices in their head were telling them that that person was necessary to die for the greater good. I've worked with someone who was a local CVS worker, living his life, got charged with murder of 2 small children, came to prison and had a psychotic break. I've worked with people who are women who are addicted to drugs because their pimp got them addicted in order to do his job, who now is incarcerated and dealing with all of the addiction from those years. So correctional mental health is so wide, that's why I love it. The diversity of which I get to see is just really wonderful. We already saw in this video the magnitude at which we are talking. The deinstitutionalization, I call it trans-institutionalization because it really didn't deinstitutionalize that population, it just transitioned them to a different type of environment, which is prison and jails. You can hear all kinds of stats about how many mentally ill, how many substance use. This is like SAMHSA numbers, but if you're like, well, that's not the number I see, yes, you're right, because research varies based on if it's doing it at jails or prisons, what part of the country, et cetera. But on average, we can say that 43% of the people coming into prison have had some sort of mental health long-term diagnosis or are going to get it while they're incarcerated. 15 to 25%, the video said 20 to 25%, are serious mental illness, things that are not going to go away. Over 65%, that number I've seen as high as like 60, or as high as 82%, again, based on region, based on prisons or jails. And over 90% of them have at least one traumatic event, but I'd put money on most of them have chronic trauma, right? Abuse and neglect from childhood. These aren't people who came from white picket fenced houses. And the suicide rate, as it said, is 3 times the general population. So just a quick look at where we're at. How did we get here? The video already highlighted some of these. People with pre-existing mental illness are more likely to be homeless, and then they end up coming to jail or prison. So the trans-institutionalization of people that used to be in the hospital who are now in prison. Incarceration, of course, can re-trigger anxiety or depression or psychosis, especially if it's stress-induced psychosis. So incarceration in and of itself will cause mental health. The drugs that people are using now, I could do a whole presentation on something I call spicephrenia, like K2 spice. They call it Katie in prison, among other names. But it really presents as schizophrenia, and it used to be, you detox somebody 3 to 5 days, and you could get them back out to general population. But now, with some of the drugs that they're using, we're looking at people that have schizophrenic-like symptoms for the rest of their lives. Correctional staff are expected to serve the most dangerous person while also being aware that some of these people are sick. And how do you do that? How do you go from, treating the guy who's threatening to punch you in the face to then the dementia guy who is like just trying to figure out what year it is, right? How do you kind of go back and forth on those two things? That's a really hard thing to do. And so staff might overreact to things that they don't mean to, but they're not able to kind of change who they're talking to at the moment. Staffing shortages across the country. If you are owners in this room, I say no more. Physical facilities that were not likely set up for treatment. In the 60s, 70s, we were so focused on some of the things that were talked about earlier that we weren't worried about, is there enough space for therapists? Is there substance use counselor offices? Are there education programming, right? We weren't thinking about their re-entry. We were thinking, we're gonna incarcerate them, they're not gonna wanna be incarcerated, they're gonna hate it, and so they're gonna stop coming back to prison. And we know that's not true, and I'm gonna talk more about that later. The physical space hinders my ability to do treatment. Imagine if you lived here, you came down to my office, and I was like, let's talk about your history, right? But I'm like, oh, by the way, after this 40-minute session, you have to go back and live here. So there's not a lot of dignity here. There's not a lot of like self-empowerment here when you live here, right? I don't feel psychologically safe to maybe uncover what we're gonna talk about in therapy. And so all of that shame, if you live with that shame every day, what normally happens? I'm gonna give you the answer. It's like defensiveness, right? You're pointing, it was actually that guy, I didn't actually shoot the gun, it was my buddy who got us into that trouble, and I only was robbing that bank because I needed it because my insurance won't pay for my medicine. You know, they've got all kinds of excuses. So much of my therapy process is getting through like this, living there, because they have to get over that defensive shame before I can do anything therapeutic about like, how did you actually get here? Let's actually talk about what happened. And no doubt this is better. This looks very nice, right? But still, the environment in and of itself, ooh, this is a little finicky, in and of itself is shameful, right? So even this, like, probably doesn't instill in me this self-empowerment, I'm gonna get my life right and I'm gonna do better. So keeping that in mind, staff amenities, like I already said, some of these prisons that I've worked at, I have worked at a lot of prisons federally and Indiana Department of Correction. And my offices have looked like this. Like they were cells turned into offices because they didn't have any offices. And I wanted an office, you know, on the mental health unit so I could be close to my patients. So I'm literally in a cell just like they are. I might have a computer, but it's just like them, right? Bathrooms that I literally, like I've used this bathroom after I had a baby and was doing the thing to like, I had to do that in that bathroom. So recruiting and retaining staff when your amenities look like this, because that's not what we were designed to do back in, you know, when we were building prisons a long time ago. So I want to talk a little bit about what it's like as a psychologist behind the walls and like what we do and why what you do impacts us, because you're not building just walls, you're not just putting in plumbing, and Craig was just alluding to this about the incentivization of doing better, and what you do matters so much, and I really want to reiterate that what you're doing is really important to what I want to do. Sorry. First things first though, I do want to say bad guys exist. I have worked with psychopaths who I don't ever want to get out of prison, and that is not the population I'm talking about today, okay? I will never stand up here and say we need to get rid of restrictive housing. I don't believe that, but I do think there are things that we can do to make it better. So if you don't know, this is like a Disney bad guys movie. It's adorable. I have 2 children, so that's the reference. But I just don't want to come off as like some Pollyannish, like we're gonna save the world. There are bad people in prison, and I can tell you lots of stories. My husband told me I should, in fact, but I don't have a lot of time. Oh no, this slide didn't come up right. That's okay though. This one slide for some reason is giving us a problem. I don't know if you know this, but the incarcerated population lie. Yeah, I know, thank you, shocking. But why do they do that is because honestly, there's this stigma of mental health. Yes, for some. It used to be that the people who were in gangs, like they could not say they had mental health issues because there was too much stigma related. But there's the flip side of this, of people who are like, oh, excuse me, Dr. Dwenger, I'm really sick and I need to go to the prison, or I need to go to the mental health unit. Because a lot of times it's smaller units, it is quieter maybe, it's nicer, it's cushier, so to say. There's more administrative oversight at that facility. There's more female staff maybe, there's more custody officers. There's also the incentive of if I've gotten myself into trouble at my home site and I'm in drug debt or I've made some enemies, I can just literally leave that behind, go to a mental health unit for a year, and then come back and hopefully everybody will forget me because other people have gotten into drug debt. So I think the hardest part of my job when I was working with Kevin and your job is figuring out how to make it therapeutic, but not so wonderful that everyone wants to go there, and I've got to figure out who's lying and who's not. I don't have the answer to that, so best of luck, but I will give you some examples later. This is one I just don't know what to do with. So go ahead, get out your phones. This is interactive. Please get out your phones, scan this QR code. We're gonna play a game. I think you'll like it, okay? Play along. Once you scan this and you put your name in or make up a name in case you don't want to identify who you really are in this game, you don't have to then scan the next QR codes. This is a free app, so I don't have any control over it. But once you're logged in, just stay on this on your phone. You don't have to keep logging in. I'm gonna read letters that I that I have received, and I want you to tell me if you think that they need a mental health unit or if they could stay in general population. Okay, it's just a little game of the kind of people we're serving. So, Psych Tech, Miss Dwenger. Recently, I've given no knowledge bearing the misplacement of my actions, considering strong emotions, depicting any sense of persons around me for feelings, existing that is weighty of what is to govern them. Though it may seem as a practice, my meaning is a virtue, consisting conditions of regard that tend no respect of those in nature before what I lie on, in truth, to what makes my surroundings a loss of its entirety, to resort to in cause for what tidings offer. Go ahead, and you don't have to do this, it should come up on your thing. Mental health unit, this person needs a mental health unit or not. I'm gonna give you a minute for everybody to log in. Last chance to play. All right, mental health unit or not? You got 10 seconds to decide if you're undecided still. Okay, 67% said mental health unit. The right answer is mental health unit. No matter how many times I read that letter, I'm like, what is he saying? And that's a depiction of someone who is trying not to sound mentally ill, right? He's like, I'm gonna throw in enough big words and I'm gonna just confuse you enough that you think you're dumb. And it works. I'm like, what is he saying? But that person is obviously struggling, and imagine what that's like to be in a general population cell house, and that's how he's talking to his peers. Do you think they're like giving that guy credit or the benefit of the doubt? Probably not, right? Next one, Dr. Dwenger, that's me. I've got a lot of great names over the years. I'm writing to plead my case and hope this time you will listen. I can't stay here, it's too dangerous. I want to kill myself and you won't even put me on suicide watch. I've been doing what you say, but I need a mental health unit. If you don't move me, the blood is on your hands. You don't need to rescan. Mental health unit or not? What do you think? Okay, good. 91% of you said not a mental health unit. Yes, he's just trying to manipulate me into being scared enough that I would move him to a mental health unit. So, good job. This is a picture I received. True electricity bad dad. I'll just give you a second to look at this. Decide whether he can stay in general population or not. What do you think? %70 say mental health unit, yeah. Can you imagine that guy living out in general population? I mean, he's got a whirlpool in his belly. He's got lots of interesting things going on there. Not someone who's well enough to be in general population and probably needs a different setting. Threatening that guy with restrictive housing, like if you don't do this, you're going to restrictive housing, probably isn't going to do a whole lot for him, right? Okay, last one. To all DOC employees, please be advised that your predator stigma does not define the behavior that I have displayed over the duration of my incarceration. I am a coochie crook, a man who possesses the caliber of intellect that can captivate any woman and manipulate her out of her coochie. Once it's surrendered, she will feel as though it was the most gratifying decision she ever has made in her entire life. Signed lovingly, the Coochie Crook. Okay. Mental health unit or not? They're debating who wrote that letter up here.
Promise not to Tony.
61 to 39. Honestly, I have no idea. I don't know, but to sign your name Coochie Crook is kind of interesting to me. Obviously, most likely a sex offender who is trying to downplay whatever he did in order to get incarcerated. Maybe there's some mental health stuff there, or maybe he's just a real gem of a human. I don't know, but I added it just for comedic value. Okay, so let's talk about the people I really am serving, those who we said needed a mental health unit, some of them of which who are seriously mentally ill. When I say seriously mentally ill, I mean a long-standing catastrophic diagnosis that impacts their everyday life, okay? Like schizophrenia, delusional disorder, bipolar disorder, getting in the way of their everyday living, okay? What does that population need? The man with the picture, the true electricity Baghdad, and he's got a whirlpool in his stomach, what does he need? Well, he needs meds. First and foremost, those folks need meds. There's no talk therapy out of schizophrenia, okay? So we gotta make medication dispensing and access easy. Groups, those kind of groups are normally, here's the newspaper, let's read it. It's 2025, the president is Donald Trump, like orienting them to time and place and what they need to do. Have you showered recently? When was the last time you took or brushed your teeth? Why is brushing your teeth important, right? We're talking about just social skills, how do we get through life? What we need in the unit then is easy wayfinding. This population is going to get easily overwhelmed. They've got voices in their head, they're delusional. So we don't need a lot of overstimulation, but we need easy access to this is where I go to get my meds, this is where I go to group, this is where I watch TV, right? So they can very easily find where they need to go. We're probably going to have softer furniture and images that are nice and calm, like the Major General was saying, with some biophilia stuff, which is just a fancy word for nature. I want to encourage engagement. This is a population who is likely to isolate and stay in their cell and say, nope, Dr. Dwenger, I'm fine, right? And so I want to have activities that are going to get them out. I don't care what it is. A garden is like a long-standing joke with me because I had to fight very hard 11 years ago to get a garden at Newcastle Psychiatric, where I was the psychologist, and now I'm like mandating it everywhere I go, because there is actually something therapeutic about these folks getting out of their cell and putting their hand in dirt and seeing tomatoes grow, right? Like, and sometimes that's the only way I can get them to talk to me. I'm like, hey, let's go look at the flowers. They're not gonna sit and have a conversation with me, and if they do, it's about, I had a patient who was convinced I was married to him, and we had children, and every day he would ask me if I went out and I rode the horses, and did I feed the horses or not, right? Like, what's the point in sitting in front of that man and being like, oh, are you feeling anxious today? You're right, like, there's not gonna be a lot there. So, but if I can get him out and oriented to what the time of year is and what's happening in his surrounding, maybe I could get him to call his family and get some familial support, etc. Another thing that's come up over the last couple of months is forced showers. This is a population, again, who is not aware of their hygiene. They're not brushing their teeth, they're not taking showers. This is not the top of mind for them. So we need easy access to showers, and may need showers that are built so that custody can force those showers. I know that sounds cruel, but in reality, I need these people cleaned up, right? I don't want them to get MRSA, I don't want them to get bed sores. So forcing them into the shower, that means a custody officer is literally going in with a loofah and hopefully showering them for me. But you can imagine that gets them wet. And nobody wants to work all day, a 12-hour shift, after they've had to wash down Mr. Johnny. So if there's a way that you can design some showers, Willoughby, where we could have the officer outside, right, and helping in a humane way shower this person, but in reality, we are forcing them to take a shower. And then, of course, this overlap with medical illness in this population is huge. They're not people who have necessarily taken care of their diabetes or their high blood pressure, and so they have a lot of comorbidity things, so having a unit like this close to medical, and that's what we did at Westville, put it right next to the infirmary and the medical unit. On the other end of the spectrum, the people who might show up to owners out there who are like, oh, that's not the population I'm super struggling with, you might be struggling with personality disorders. Same kind of thing. This is going to get in their way of everyday life, but it's not serious mental illness like I was just describing. This is antisocial personality disorder, total disregard for other people, lack of empathy. They don't have a clear sense maybe of right and wrong, or if they do, they don't care. This also might be borderline personality disorder. Those are the people who are hot to cold in a minute. You say one wrong thing and they are off to the races, and you're a racist POS, right? The next population is like narcissistic personality disorder. Those are the three that we see the most common in prison, and there's reason for that. These personality disorders started in childhood, most likely, grew into adolescence, and it's because of the trauma, their unstable relationships, their drug use, right? There's a reason personality disorders are more likely to happen in prison. But this is the population who is testing you, and if you don't do, that was the, the letter, Dr. Dwenger, if you don't move me to a mental health unit, I'm gonna cut myself, the blood is on your hands. Probably a borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality, self-harmers kind of fall in this category. Not kind of, they fall in this category. So what do they need? They do need treatment. They need that one-on-one and that group treatment. So we need group space for cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy. I'm not going to get into what those are. I'm happy to discuss them after, but they only gave me so much time. Safe places. So this is where the anti-ligature stuff might come in. And I got lots of feelings about anti-ligature and how much we're putting on there, and that's another soapbox for another day, so I won't get on that one. But this population is a population that is used to hearing yes, right? Because they're like, if you don't do this, I'm going to cut myself. And the officer's like, I'm trying to just go home in an hour. Like, yeah, here's an extra sack lunch, right? So they get what they want because this has worked for them. I am the therapist at this point saying, no. You can't have that. That's part of the treatment. Like, quite honestly, I'm going to say no. My point is to piss you off, and you have to figure out how to cope with that like the rest of the world. So these are the folks that are going to then battle me back and forth about, you said I couldn't, but I'm going to force you. One time a guy was on suicide watch, and he wanted a magazine, which I understand. He wants something to do in there, and I said no, because of part of this was just boundary setting. He went back into that cell and sawed off a finger. He had done this 2 other times. He literally had 3 fingers missing by the time he left Newcastle Psychiatric, but he sawed off a finger because I would not give him a magazine. Came out of the cell and was like, this is your fault, you did this. And I was like, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. So this is where you're gonna have more hardened furniture most likely, because they are gonna punch the wall because they're mad at me. They are gonna do whatever kind of destructive thing they wanna do because they're mad at the officer who didn't give them the extra sack lunch or didn't get the meds when they thought they should get them. A big thing for me here, and this came up with TJ, is this internal locus of control. So a lot of these people go throughout their life learning external locus of control. And what that means is I maybe was neglected as a child, I got put into foster care, and I was doing all the right things, and then the social worker came and said, you need to move. And so they picked me up and they moved me to a different foster care. And then I was like, well, being good didn't work, so now I'm gonna be bad. So they skip school and they're doing all the bad things. The social worker comes back and says, you're moving. So he packs up his stuff and he moves them, right? Like nothing that person does matters to what happens to them. That's what they learn. And that's a reality, right? Like I can be really good and mom is drunk and she still hits me. I could be really bad, dad still is high and hits me. Like nothing makes sense about what I do. I'm so sorry. What I do, and that is a reaction to what I do. So they learn this external locus of control. What I want to teach them is internal locus of control. If you cut, you won't have razors anymore, right? If you blah, 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 you can't have this. And teach them that how they interact with the world is based on what they want or what they need. So that's where the dimming lights came in. I actually, at one point, Kevin and I, we were having a discussion, and even in my household, like I like the very bright lights in the house, and my husband likes the cool lights, and it annoys the crap out of me because I come home and I turn on all the lights I want, and then he comes home and he turns off all the lights he wants and puts on the other lights. So like even that little example of we all have personal preference, and we should be able to have that personal preference in our space, going back to what the Major General said about you have feelings in a space, whether this makes you feel good or bad or controlled. So how do we give them internal locus of control, and they can do the things that maybe make them feel good about themselves? Behavior plans is the last thing. This is probably the most researched and helpful skill, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, by the way. This whole presentation is just mine. The behavioral plans is, I want to teach you how to be better, okay? Like a better community member. So I'm not gonna teach you anything you don't know. You're using behaviorism every day in your life, with your kids, everything, right? The idea on behaviorism is that the actions that we do are shaped by our environment. Whether we get rewarded for it, we're likely to do it again, right? Or if there's a negative consequence, we're not gonna do it again. So that's behaviorism in a nutshell, right? I mean, think about your kids. This is what you do with your kids. Oh, you did your homework, great. Now you get your sucker. Or, oh, you followed the directions and did your chores, now you get a sticker. And when you get 10 stickers, you get to go get ice cream, right? Everybody following kind of what I'm saying? Like, this is not new. I know you know this, but I want it in the front of your brain for the rest of this presentation. Real quickly, I want to explain there's 4 quadrants, and this is going to come into play. So I'm not going to, there's not like a test. I'm not going to give Joe your report card, but Try to pay attention, because I think it'll be helpful. So increasing behavior is the reinforcement. If I want you to do more of what I want to reinforce it. If I want you to stop doing what you're doing, I'm going to punish it, okay? The negative and the positive don't have anything to do with good or bad. Negative just means you take it away. Positive means you give them something. So think about when you get in your car and it dings and dings and dings when you don't put on your seatbelt, but then you put on your seatbelt and it stops dinging. That's negative reinforcement. It's taking away the annoying sound that you don't want, and it increases the likelihood that you're going to put on your seatbelt. Make sense? Everybody's sleeping. Okay, we're going to do another game. Your phone, you don't need to scan the QR code. It will automatically pick up from where it left off. All right, so when a patient follows the rules and goes to group, we remove his handcuffs and we get in all the extra security measures. Which is that? Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, or negative punishment? So they do something we like, and we remove handcuffs and security measures. Positive reinforcement was the winner of you all, but it's actually negative reinforcement because we're taking away the thing they don't want. So I'm taking away their handcuffs. Most guys don't want to sit in a group like this with cuffs in their back for 2 hours at a time. That's not fun. So taking away the cuffs is reinforcement. If you lose your television or tablet after you break a rule, what is that? So you get in trouble, you break a rule, you get a conduct report, and I say, no more TV, out of here. What would that one be? All right, you all said negative punishment, and that is correct, negative punishment. This next one is a real-life example that still sits heavy on my heart from 12 years ago. When a patient goes on suicide watch, where that suicide watch cell is, they can see the television, they can hear the officers gossiping about the weekend. It's like a great location for social hour. Do you think they're more likely to go there? That's a reinforcement. Or do you think they don't want to go there? Okay, so closer split on positive reinforcement and positive punishment. Positive reinforcement. Yes, I will tell you the reason that still burns my butt is because every March Madness and every major football game, our suicide cells were full. And it was not because they were mentally ill, it was because they wanted to watch March Madness, because they had a bet with a guy down the range on who was going to win. So things like that are in what you all do and the day-to-day decisions that you're making when you're building these things do impact my day-to-day. Good job, Ryan, whoever you are. Woo. There's not a prize. I'll give you a high five later. Why does this matter? Most correctional environments were historically set up to get compliance through punishment. If you mess up, I'm going to send you to restrictive housing. If you mess up, I'm going to take away all your crap. I'm going to make you miserable, right? But we know after years and years of research that reinforcement is more powerful. With your kids, actually timeout is less effective than, hey, I caught you doing something good, here's your sticker, okay? Just for all of you parents out there who have young kids still. Reinforcement is actually much more powerful than punishment. Punishment often harms mental health, especially if you're SMI and you have no idea why all of a sudden your TV got taken because yesterday you did something you don't even remember you did it, right? Punishment driven makes the correctional officers look for the bad. I'm scanning to see who messed up so that I can take their stuff or give them a conduct report, right? Versus I'm looking for the good so I can reward it. So we're changing even the correctional officers how they're thinking. By taking away their things and doing the punishment, we're creating unsafe environments for staff. Because if you're going to take my stuff, I'm probably mad about it, right? So we want to really stop thinking about negative punishment. It's going to happen because prison is prison, and prison by itself is punishment, right? But as designers and as we want to kind of change the model, we want to really work on the reinforcement. One way we could do that, this is Westville. These are not exactly what we're doing in Westville, but this is that mental health unit that we've talked about. It starts with the high acuity, so most secure. Single-celled, not great furnishing. The group room is secure with settings. They're gonna be in cuffs all of the time. They're gonna eat in their cell. It's not great, right? Like, I don't want it to be great because I want them to do well enough, take their meds, go to group, participate, do therapy, so they can move down the row. So you can see as it gets lighter yellow and lighter green, they get more things. So this is the reinforcement. So now, maybe they can have a bunkie. Not everybody wants a bunkie, I know. But they might have a separate toilet and sink, which sounds so silly, but honestly, who wants to wash their bowl that they just ate soup out of in the toilet that they just pooped in 30 seconds ago? Like, so even just the humanity of moving those two things from sink over here and toilet over here, in my mind and in their mind, is a step in the right direction. It's more humane. So some things you could do. To then want them to get to general population. The goal is to get them to general population, right? That they're easier to serve, it's less time intensive for your custody staff, it's better if they're in general population. So what can we put in general population that makes them want to go there? Now we're putting showers in cells, which is exciting. Access to full commissary. Kitchen and unit, that's kind of becoming a popular thing. So you want to incentivize general population units so that we're moving people to want to be there and to stay there. Imagine getting treatment here. This is a reality, I get it. When I do treatment in restrictive housing, I want them like this because I don't trust them, like, right? But also, the old mind frame was if we take away all their stuff and we put them in isolation, they're gonna think about their mistakes and they're gonna make better choices in the future. No, they don't, you guys. What they do is drugs and they throw piss and urine on officers, right? Because they have no more things to do and they have totally lost hope. There's no hope in restrictive housing. This is how they live. So it's not, though I know that this is a reality, it's not where we want them to stay. So imagine getting treatment there versus here. Where would you want to get treatment, right? Hopefully here. So doing what you need to do in order to get to a nicer spot. Even in the way you think about suicide watch, I think this is brilliant. I don't know who came up with this, but good for them. The padded cells. So the picture on the left here, that was a picture of what the padded cells are at IDOC. That's what I think of. And then somewhere along the lines, after I got involved with Kevin and the team, realized that they are now putting padded cells with a bathroom in between where they could shower and go to the bathroom, which not only is safer for officers, because if I got to spray you because you're being ridiculous, I can just pop that door, you can shower yourself, right? I'm not then cuffing you up, you're gonna punch me, we're gonna get in a tuffle on the way to the shower, which is halfway down the unit. This allows them, you're doing good, go ahead and take a shower if you want, because showers are nice, right? Like, most of us like to shower and be clean. Or if you're doing well enough, you can go to the bathroom on your own. The bottom picture there then is maybe another graduation. So you're in the padded cell, you're unfortunately going to the bathroom and not great. You're doing well enough though that then we graduate you to be able to use the shower and the bathroom in between, to then being able to go into what I call a suicide cell, which is much like a regular cell with just bigger windows. So then they might have a desk and a bed, right? Graduating steps. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I say, you guys know this, there is stuff in the environment that makes things worse or better for your staff and for your incarcerated population. We know harsh lighting, overcrowding, unexpected loud noises increases frustration and increases the likelihood that people are going to get conduct reports. This is in the research. I can give you some if you want. Monotony of interiors, actually, like the all-white walls that Kevin was talking about, that actually is going to increase the likelihood of dangerousness in state hospital research. So doing what we can to help the officers and the individuals in the facilities be safer by paying attention to the environmental stressors. This is also not anything new for you. Think about yourself. What do you need? What makes you happy in your life? Autonomy, right? I am in charge of my own body. I get to make my own decisions. Stimuli, I don't want to just stare at a blank wall all day. I need to be interacting with things and see different colors and different noise and different light. I got to move around the space. And humane treatment. I need to be shown some dignity so that I can actually want to work on myself. When you treat me like a dog, I'm probably going to act like a dog, right? You put me in restrictive housing and I have nothing to lose, I don't act the best. This is just an example. I asked Kevin Orm to be my actor and he refused, but I just want to give an idea of what it's like as a psychologist to go down the range. These are practical things I would like you all to think about in this room, all of you wonderful designers and manufacturers. So the slider opens. I'm standing outside the slider, by the way, for 5 minutes. So for the love of goodness, if you don't need to put a slider, don't put a slider, because I just end up spending half of my day waiting at sliders. So only when they're necessary. Then I walk in, the showers are first. This guy's naked, being like, hey, Dwenger, right? Like, so I'm not trying to look at him, but this guy over here in this shower is also really mad at me and aggressive, and I'm afraid he might spit on me. So could we just maybe move the showers to the back of the range so that I don't have to go by those two guys every time? Maybe that's something we could look at. The next guy's mule kicking the door just to be a jerk. You know, it's loud. So what can we do? In the red cells, this is what it looks like. This is what Newcastle Psychiatric looks like, where I spent my first 5 years in DOC. So I go down, he's mule kicking. What can we do for sound absorption? Because not only is he annoying me, because I want to go talk to that guy in the big red X, by the way, is who I'm trying to go and like check in on, because you know he didn't take his meds today, and I want to make sure he took his meds. It's supposed to be like a 30-second conversation, right? And I got to do all this. So what can we do for sound absorption, both for me and for the other people on the unit? Next cell, he's like, hey, Dwenger, hey, did you get my letter? Did you get my letter? I sent you a letter. Did you get my letter? Did you get my letter? Hey, did you get my letter? Because they want to know if I got their mail. What kind of correspondence, or could we put like a little basket, you know, outside their cell where they could put stuff that I pick up? Because right now, what do? They have to give it to the officer. Well, the officer's mad at them. The officer doesn't give it to me for 4 days because he is being a turd and doesn't want to give it to me. I keep going. The next guy's like, when's group? What time is it? What time is it? The orientation thing, y'all, is so real. I cannot go down a cell range without 6 people asking me what time it is. Because they do. They lose total ability to, is it day, is it night, what day is it, what month is it? So anything we can do to help orient them, the button where it says, I imagine Siri, like, hello, today is April 15th, 2025, and the weather is whatever, get them oriented to season. Another thing we did was calendars in their cells. The poop, it always smells in mental health units. If you've ever gone into a mental health unit, after it opens, it always smells. So whatever we can do about cleaning things, windows in particular, the amount of men I have talked to through smeared poop is higher than I want it to be. It's very high. And in reality, I only wanted a 30-second like check-in with this guy, ask him why he didn't take his meds. So these are some things we're doing at Westville, some skylights so that they can see maybe the time of the year. Skylights are not as good as windows where you can see the landscape or like the horizon, but it's the best we could do. The intercoms, we already talked about that, dimmable intercoms. I don't think I did that. And then the calendar. So if I say you need to be clear from any kind of self-harm for 7 days, they actually can cross those calendar days off, know when 7 days is, and know when they're going to get their next phase. They don't have to rely on me on, hey, Dwenger, when am I going to get my next group, or when am I going to get my next phase in this program, because they can start tracking it themselves. I'm most excited about this calendar out of everything, I think, at Westville. And then there's a space for some art. Because I'm over on time, I'm not going to talk about this, but correctional officer wellness applies to all of this too. Working in a correctional facility is not normal. Like the things that you see and do every day is not normal, and that comes out in these stats. Higher anxiety, higher depression, higher suicide rate, 12 to 15 year less life expectancy than the national average for correctional officers, and the injury rate is 216 per 1,000 of your staff are gonna get injured on the job. There's things we can do in the environment to make those numbers better. I am confident and I am hopeful that we're gonna do it. All the environmental stressors also apply to your officers. So those loud noises, that bad lighting. So designing staff spaces that are therapeutic. And I know we're moving this direction, but I urge you to continue thinking about this for the sake of the people that work in the facility as well. And if you don't make decisions here, you're not an owner and you're like, I just listened to this whole dang presentation and I don't have any ability to do anything, I just want to remind you, you do. What you do matters. And you are changing people's life. Every material that you choose to put in that facility, whether you powder coat it or not, whether there's a sight line to an officer that makes you feel safe or not, the ceiling height, if you feel closed in or not, all of that matters, and the decisions that you're making really do impact the people who live and work there. So thank you for all that you do. I very much appreciate it, and thank you for your time. They're expensive.
And they're looking at me like I've got three heads when I'm talking about mental health. Even the law enforcement staff says they've committed a crime. We don't need to mollycoddle them, okay?
Yep.
Has there been enough of these design protocols in place that professionals like yourself have data that proves that some of these devices, some of these approaches to correctional environments really do make a difference? Because I've even had them argue, we don't want to treat the mentally ill in jails because that's
Yep.
working at cross purposes. We really want society to embrace mental illness facilities apart from our jails. So talk about those two items.
Yeah, and I agree with them. I don't want these people in your jails either. But just because I close my eyes doesn't mean they go away, right? And I get the mentality of like, I don't want to build, in Indiana, we created a juvenile kind of safer place for those, we're seeing a lot more with autism spectrum disorder come in, and we purposely did not want to call it a mental health unit for the fear that judges would be like, oh, IDOC has a mental health unit and they have two psychologists that work there and Dr. Dwenger oversees it. Go ahead, let's just send them there. So I get not advertising we can help with the mental health crisis in your community. However, they are there, right? 3 times the amount of mental health needs are in your correctional facilities in your community than they are in mental health hospitals. That's just the reality, and we saw that number on the thing. So I guess just thinking about like, just because you close your eyes doesn't mean they go away. Like, this is the reality we have. And for the maybe the first part of your question about people who are like, yeah, they did a crime, they deserve to be here, but what about your staff? Because the thing that I really rely on, for those who are owners here, how many of you are fully staffed and have no issues with recruitment or retention? 0. That is a huge thing. I mean, I can't go to an NCCHC or an ACA conference, right, to hear about, and also thinking about Gen Zs. They don't stay in jobs just for funsies, right? Like, they're not my dad who got a job he didn't even really like and then did it for 40 years because that's what he did. No, these Gen Zers, they'll pop, right? If you're not taking care of me, I ain't taking care of you. So and by 2030, 30% of the working population is going to be these Gen Zers who will leave at the turn of a dime if you don't take care of their mental health. So when it comes to lighting and lights and noise and biophilic access to nature, those clients, I'm always just talking about the staff. Because you are gonna burn so much money. How much does it cost to recruit someone, do the 12 weeks of training, the 3 weeks on the job training, and then they work for you for 6 months and leave? I think at one point Rob gave me the number of how much it costs to actually do that with people, and we were having people leave at the 9-month mark, I think, and it was like there's a set dollar amount of how much money you lose every time that happens, and Gen Zs are going to leave after 9 months without a doubt if you don't have some of that stuff. So that's what I talk about.
But aside from staff, is there any measurable difference in recidivism if you put the ones that need it in a more responsive environment than not?
So the question is there any data to support if you do all these things, are we getting less recidivism and that kind of thing? And there's not. And part of that is because nobody's gone all in yet. Nobody has taken the leap to say, I'm going to do all the things that research says we should do. And so we don't have that. The thing that I have the closest of, when we look at the Indiana Department of Corrections recidivism rates, the mental health recidivism rate is like 4 times that of someone who doesn't have mental health needs. The other number that we looked at is emergency room utilization post-incarceration. So you have people in prison who walk to chow, get their food, they go to medical, they get their pill. They have no idea how to get groceries. They don't know what to do when they get the flu. They don't know what to do to get their meds refilled. And so what they end up doing is going to the ER. That is costing your community money. And we had some numbers about how quickly, within 3 months, the mental health population is showing up at an ER. And they're indigent. They don't have money to pay for that. So who's paying for that number too, when we're not helping them learn how to cook and learn how to take their meds and some of that transitional housing stuff? But I don't know of any research like that, no.
Yeah.
Yes?
Quick question for you. In Indiana,
just as you're probably most familiar with that state. You have 90-some counties, okay?
Yes.
How many of those counties have adequate help from a psychologist or professional? How many of those counties are doing everything that you would recommend they do? And if they're not, why not?
I don't know much about jails, I'll say, because I came from the Indiana Department of Correction. Before that, I was in the Federal Bureau of Prison for my residency. So jail is what I've been learning about mostly since January, so I honestly don't know. What I can tell you is that this behavioral health crisis across the country is across the country. There are not enough providers to serve the amount of people that need it right now, and that's a whole other discussion, but there was no eye-opening experience like my own. On Monday, I decided I wanted to get back in therapy. So I was like, I'm gonna spend a couple hours, I'm gonna find myself a therapist. And I'm well, I like to think, you might think otherwise, but like, I'm capable of calling and like getting referrals and doing the thing, and like I know how insurance works, right? I spent 2 hours on the phone trying to find a mental health therapist. I didn't care what kind, just some like adjustment stuff to the new job and all that kind of thing, nothing major, and I gave up. So I know that if I gave up after 2 hours as a psychologist, a doctoral level educator who knows like how this system works, that someone in crisis, someone who is homeless and mentally ill and needs their lithium is not gonna find a provider. And I've like told so many people that story since Monday because I'm like, I just cannot believe that is the state we're in. So I would venture to guess 0. And because I live in a pretty populated area. I don't even live in rural Indiana. So it's rough. It's rough. And the reality is we are going to serve this population until the country figures it out and we get the state hospitals back up and running and we've got some more transitional house so that these people aren't just cycling through. It is what it is. That's maybe not what you want to hear, but.
So just to expand on the question, so this is coming from a perspective that's pretty unique, of having to stand in front of the legislators and defend the money we're spending on mental health treatment in correctional environments. I spent a lot of time trying to grasp how I was going to do that. How am I going to sell this to the legislators that are going to give me the money to build these facilities? And it was really unique that after actually letting them sit down and talk, and I used my secret weapon, was right there on the stage. In case you haven't noticed, she's a little bit dynamic. She's very, very informative. But after setting these legislators down, showing them the environments, showing them what our goals were, it was amazing how many of the legislators become my champions. At the end of the day, it was easier for me to sell the mental health aspects of the new correctional facility than it was to how I was going to do a central utility plant. Many of the legislators actually jumped on the bandwagon, embraced the theories of mental health treatment. We educated them, and we started this 2 years, 3 years before we were actually successful at getting the funding. But we started sending subliminal messages and just educating legislators, and at the end of the day, they can become some of our biggest champions. And actually selling the cost of mental health treatment in a correctional facility became one of the easiest things of the project.
And I think part of that is because their constituents are calling them because of the behavioral health crisis. I'm not alone in not being able to find a provider. Psychiatry, I think last I looked, is like a 6-month wait list if you need your meds. So you come out of prison and sure, I've got you lithium for 30 days and I've got you a script for 30 or 90 days, but that doesn't matter because you can't actually get in to see a prescriber, a psychiatrist in Indiana for 6 months. So what do you do in that gap? You come back to prison.
Let me add to that.
Yep.
Fire me up. Coming out of the corrections where I lived 30 years plus going to a prison every day, and so I just had PTSD listening to all this stuff. I saw it all.
I'm sorry.
But let me tell you what's in. No, it's fine. It's great. But jails, and I mean there are jail professionals in here today, and Larry, this goes to the issue you're talking about. What do the jails do? They bond those. How in the hell can I get them out of this jail? And they bond them out. Gone. They don't want to have. They don't have the resources to deal with it. They don't have the money to deal with it. They can't send them to a local hospital And I'm sure there's some of the sheriff's deputies in here, you dealt with that of having to take them. We don't have the manpower to do with that, so we get them out of our custody. And so jails are ill-equipped under standard design for the mental health population. And so they do the best that they can. And a lot of times, you know, they'll tell you they're frustrated with that. They're frustrated with the how do I deal with that? And so, you know, those are real questions that law enforcement, the sheriffs need to be talking about. These are the real things that we deal with. Let's give Dr. Dwenger a great hand. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic.